Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our English informational session. I'd like to thank you all for being here and giving us your time today. So before we begin, I would like to introduce myself and along with the other presenters. So my name is Micah Lay. I am a research analyst at the Care Registry at UCSF. I've been involved in numerous community volunteerism and other outreach research activities throughout the Bay Area. I've also been involved with CARE for about a year and a half now, and it's been such a rewarding experience to support the AAPI community. I'm also a recent graduate of San Jose State University, where I obtained my Bachelor's of Science in Public Health. So for our next speaker, we have Dr. Jessica De Leon. She is a behavioral neurologist and assistant professor of neurology at UCSF Memory and Aging Center. She received her undergraduate degree in neuroscience and Spanish at Johns Hopkins University and obtained her MD with thesis degree at UCSF. Her research focuses on bilingualism, language typology, and genetics, and how they affect the symptoms, neuroimaging, and progression of neurodegenerative disorders, including Alzheimer's disease, dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and primary progressive aphasia. In her clinical time, she cares for patients with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias as an attending physician at UCSF Memory Aging Center and the Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital. Araceli is also one of our speakers. Araceli received her master's degree in nursing at UCSF in 1972. She is a retired nurse after serving 50 years in the nursing field and primarily worked in long-term care, but served in numerous positions such as director of nursing, nursing consultant, professional service consultant, and supervising different disciplines, vice president of operations, supervising 7 to 10 facilities. And she is also advisor to the Philippine Nurses Association of America Foundation and Philippine Nurses Association of Northern California. She's also currently involved in numerous volunteering activities at her church. And our final speaker is Deslynn Jaquias. She is a business owner, motivational speaker, empowerment coach, and podcaster to Healing with Aloha. She also served as a social service coordinator for nursing care for seniors at a long-term facility in the G.N. Wilcox Memorial Hospital. And she is born and raised in the Hawaiian island of Kauai and assisted in dementia care of her grandparents, and now wants to help increase awareness surrounding Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. So thank you all for being here today. Let's get started by first showing our animated care video.
Have you ever wondered how scientists find cures for illnesses, discover ways to prevent diseases, and create technologies to improve people's lives? All of our scientific innovations came from research, the process by which we ask questions, perform experiments, and find solutions to the world's problems. Scientific research in the U.S. has led to incredible advances in medicine, but there remains one major limitation. It lacks representation from people of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, especially Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Humans are incredibly diverse. We have many differences in genetics, upbringing, environments we live in, and cultural backgrounds. These factors all impact whether people can access and how they respond to treatments. When researchers are unable to ensure that every group from every context is properly represented in their research, the results can be skewed towards one or two groups and may not apply to everyone. Currently, Asian American But that can change with by the National Institute of Health.
Sorry about
Percent
that.
of research supported by the National Institute of Health. But that can change with your health. If you are Asian American or Pacific Islander, age 18 or older, please sign up for the Care Registry. CARE stands for the Collaborative Approach for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Research and Education. This is a research registry created just for adult Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Signing up for CARE is free, it is confidential, and you can withdraw at any time. When you sign up, you may be contacted by a researcher about a new research project. They will explain to you what participation in their project will mean to you and what happens if you agree to be part of their study. You can enroll or decline to participate. It's up to you. There are many research questions that you, your family, and your community can help answer when participating in research. For example, how much physical activity do Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders need to do to help prevent memory loss in their lifetime? And how do family members take care of their loved ones who have memory loss or disability? And what kinds of resources do caregivers need to stay healthy themselves? These vital questions cannot be answered without participation from Asian American and Pacific Islander adults from all walks of life who represent a variety of education levels, occupations, and gender identity. By enrolling in CARE and participating in research, you will help ensure that the next generation of innovations can benefit Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, including your children and grandchildren.
Okay, great. So let's continue with the presentation. So here is our presentation outline. We'll first be discussing and reviewing Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, also known as ADRD. This will be a term that we'll be using throughout the presentation. We'll also describe CARE Research Registry and how it works to help address this gap. Then we'll discuss what ADRD caregiving is and its role in society. Then we'll discuss the status of ADRD research and research participation gap for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, also known as AAPI. And then we will conclude with a Q&A session and finally the raffle. So to begin, Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, again, ADRD. So these are some very important terms that we'll be discussing. So Alzheimer's disease can be defined as a degenerative brain disease and is actually the most common form of dementia. Dementia can be seen as an umbrella term. It is a general term for the decline in mental ability severe enough to interfere with daily life and can be debilitating and very burdensome for people involved. Memory loss can be an example of a symptom associated with dementia. And it's important to know that dementia is not a specific disease, but is a general term for an overall group of symptoms. Caregiving is also a very important topic we'll be discussing. So caregiving can be defined as attending to another individual's health needs, often including assistance with one or more daily living activities, such as eating, bathing, dressing, and so on. So ADRD is very common within the United States. Alzheimer's is the only top 10 leading cause of death in the United States with no known prevention, cure, or treatment. Alzheimer's disease is also the fourth leading cause of death within California and the sixth leading cause of death in the United States. Recent estimates have actually found that Alzheimer's may actually be the third leading cause of death, just behind heart disease and cancer, as a main cause of death for older people. It's also been found that 1 in 3 persons aged 65 years old and older will die from Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. This number is expected to increase among the population, as now it is around 5.7 million, and by 2050 is expected to increase to 14 million. So as you can see, this information is very concerning, as there is much research needed to be done in order to support these future people who will develop Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. Here we have dementia risk reduction. So it's important to note that risk factors can start early on in life and can lead to the decline in cognition. So 40% of dementia is attributed to these modifiable risk factors. This can include diabetes, which can actually double your risk of developing dementia in your lifetime. It can also include depression, physical inactivity, midlife hypertension, obesity, poor diet, and also low education attainment and cognitive stimulation. As you can see on the left, we have this chart describing the 40% of known modifiable risk factors. You can see risk factors can include less education, hearing loss, traumatic brain injury, and so on. But if you see in the gray area, 60% of those modifiable risk factors are currently unknown. And this is why it's very important that we continue to support research so that we can find out what these unknown risk factors are and prevent dementia developing later on in life. So with dementia comes the importance of caregiving. So dementia caregivers provide valuable support and care, but are often considered to be hidden patients. This is because of many issues surrounding that caregivers can be overlooked. In 2019, it's been found that ADRD caregivers provided an estimated $18.6 billion in unpaid care, which is a huge contribution to the country and to many patients around the country. It's also been found that 48% who provide help for older adults do it for someone who has ADRD. So a large portion of these older adult patients are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. It's also been found 2/3 of caregivers are women and 1/3 of ADRD caregivers are daughters. So a very large portion of women who are being caretakers or daughters taking care of their elderly loved ones. 41% of caregivers have also been found to have an income of $50,000 or less per year. So being a caregiver can come with a lot of financial stress. 60% of ADRD caregivers related their emotional stress of caregiving as high or very high, with greater than 1/3 reporting symptoms of depression, stress. So being a caregiver can be very exhausting and can oftentimes lead to burnout, which is why it's important that we acknowledge caregivers as hidden patients themselves in order to acknowledge the needs that they may need in the future and support them through research. So next we'll be discussing Alzheimer's disease, related dementias, and caregiving among Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, or AAPI. So who are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, AAPIs, in America? AAPIs alone and in combination in the US comprise 7% of the US population and are actually the fastest growing racial population in the US. However, AAPIs are often lumped together in regards to research, policy, and practice when there are many distinctions between these cultural groups and many diverse populations within the AAPI group. There are 30 Asian Americans and 21 Pacific Islander group, and there are various heterogeneous groups, different languages and dialects. There are more than over 100 languages and dialects among AAPIs. There are more than 50 cultural groups. There are different immigration patterns, different religions, different diets, and also different socioeconomic status, which is why it's really important to acknowledge the diversity among the AAPI population instead of grouping them all together. Because of grouping of AAPI in research, this has led to underrepresentation and disparities in research participation. It's been found in clinical research projects focusing on AAPI participants that have been funded by the National Institute of Health, the NIH, between the years of 1992 to 2018. These projects only comprised 0.17% of the total NIH budget. That means less than 1% of research projects actually included or focused on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. This is very concerning because AAPI are again the fastest growing racial population in the US, yet they experience significant health disparities and underrepresentation. And it's important that we increase this research representation to find medical findings that do support AAPI. Currently, there is very few research that do include AAPI, but the research that does exist today suggests that AAPI are actually interested in being engaged, but there are various concerns that have led to barriers in this representation and research participation. This includes lack of cultural and linguistic information and mistrust within the medical community. All these barriers need to be addressed in order to improve research participation and to include Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Also, future studies are very much needed in order to understand how factors like immigration history, social, environmental, and genetic factors can contribute to dementia in the AAPI population. Again, all of these factors can be very different across different AAPI cultural groups. With family caregiving in AAPI population is a very common thing that occurs in family structures. It's been found in an AARP nationwide study. It showed that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are actually more than any other group believed that caring for their parents was expected for them. This can be seen that 73% agreed that caring for their parents was expected of them, versus the general population, only 49% believed this. It's also been found that AAPI families are very reluctant to put their older family members into a facility. And it's been found that 42% of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are currently caring for an older adult versus the general population where only 22% are doing so. So as you can see, there is a feeling of expectation to care for their elderly. This depends on the different cultural groups and level of culturation in the US and phenopiety, which phenopiety is the extent that you feel that you have to respect and take care of your elders as part of your identity as an Asian American and Pacific Islander. So as you can see, the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have a very community and family orientation focus, which is why we wanted to create CARE. So some of you may ask, why participate in CARE? So CARE stands for the Collaborative Approach for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Research and Education. And so CARE is a collaboration effort between multiple community and academic partners. Here you can see our Community Advisory Board, which is the heart of CARE. Here we have UC San Francisco, UC Irvine, UC Davis, as well as NAPCA, the National Asian and Pacific Islander Center on Aging, and ICANN, the International Children's Assistant Network. We also have numerous CARE community partners and are always looking to create more partnerships within the community. At CARE, it's really important that we would like to highlight our community partners. You could also find this information on our website, as there are also community partners that we have also made recently. As you can see, diversity is very important to us at CARE, as we want to include the diverse populations that exist within the AAPI population and involve the community, organizations, partners, and members in order to build the trust between CARE and the community to include their voices in our goals. CARE will be implementing culturally appropriate and innovative recruitment strategies. We do this through our theme of health across the lifespan. We chose this theme to represent the collectivist cultures that exist among the AAPI population, We acknowledge that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are not individualistic cultures, and how their main primary focus in their lives usually is surrounded by their community and their family instead of their own needs. We also chose this in order to be inclusive to caregivers who may be as young as 18 years old and older. And we also understand that education can be a dementia risk factor. So it's important that we are inclusive to all age groups. This theme also reflects how there are protective and risk factors that can occur early on in life and that can affect your health and cognition to the development of dementia. So for care, we are trying to pave the way for meaningful inclusion of AAPI in research. So in order to do this, we want to address the gap and reduce disparities in research participation in ADRD, aging, caregiving, and other health issues across the lifespan at AAPI. As you saw earlier, only 0.17% of the NIH budget in the past 2 decades has gone to AAPI research. So you can see that representation among our community is extremely low. We aim to address this by implementing culturally appropriate and innovative recruitment strategies with our community partners to enroll 10,000 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders into the research registry. This has been a very exciting process, and currently we are about 70% of our goal, and that 7,000 people AAPI have already enrolled. So it's really great to have the support from the community and continue to reach out to others and spread out the word about including our voices in medical research. This is very important to us as we aim to give AAPI a voice and an opportunity to participate in future research through the enrollment of the care registry. So with that being said, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Araceli D. Antonio.
Thank you, Micah. Good morning, everyone. As Micah mentioned earlier, I'm a retired registered nurse, and my experience has been in long-term care. And we are talking today primarily on Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. So I'd like to share my experience in that with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. So in 1975, when I was working at Mission Terrace Hospital, this was in San Francisco, it was my first experience with a patient with Alzheimer's disease. I didn't know what Alzheimer's disease was at that time. And one of our patients, we call them patients at that time, now we have to call them residents. There was a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease in one of the charts. So I asked my medical director, I said, Dr. Frecker, Dr. Frecker, what is Alzheimer's disease? And he told me it was a pre-senile dementia. That was how it was explained, in the 70s, I guess. It was a pre-senile dementia. Now it's different. So that was my first experience. And then in 1978, I worked at Hill Haven 19th Avenue, that is also in San Francisco. And this is, there are 3 floors of that facility. And we had, at that time, we had the first floor was more a combined patients of, both have residents with dementia and some don't have any dementia, but they're more like long-term patients with medical problems. And then we had the second floor. That time was more like what we consider now as a subacute unit. It was like a Medicare unit where people come in and they recover from surgery, or they have, like from surgery or from other medical illness. And then the third floor was also a combination of similar to the one on the first floor. And what we have found, the interdisciplinary team at that time, which consists of the nursing, activities, social service, and the therapy, even dietary. We found that in our first floor, we had the patients, they were fighting at each other. We have residents who are very alert and oriented, but they're wheelchair bound, and then we have residents who are walking around and confused, and they're the ones who have dementia. So and that was a very challenging time, because it's so hard to take care of these two population group, especially when we talk about activities. You need to plan activities for both groups. But the more concern, we were really concerned about more their behaviors, because they were really one of the residents will be angry at another because the other patient would be confused. So the team decided that we may need to separate them. So we separated the dementia residents. We put them on the third floor, and then the third floor patients who did not have dementia were transferred to the first floor. So that's what happened in that facility. And I consider that like the interdisciplinary team, unknowingly, we did not know that we created a dementia unit at that time, but that was what happened. So when we separated them, there was peace. It was so peaceful on the first floor, because no residents with dementia were in the first floor anymore. And when you go to the third floor, which was we did not call the unit dementia unit at that time. We just had the residents with dementia there. So the programming for each of those units were different, obviously, because at that time, I don't know, some of you may remember that we were talking about reality orientation and all that. Well, reality orientation can be applicable to the first floor because they're more alert and oriented, but it's not applicable to the third floor anymore because they had dementia. So that's my experience with the dementia unit. So it was the interdisciplinary team that unknowingly created a dementia unit. And then in 1980, I was still with Hillhaven. We decided to go ahead and create a dementia unit based on our experience with the 19th Avenue facility. So we did a special care unit at Pine Towers Convalescent Hospital. I think it's called Kindred now. So this was the first special care unit for patients with dementia in San Francisco. And I think it's it's probably in the whole Northern California. So that was my experience with a dementia unit. So in 2002 to 2018, I worked in Channing House, which is a CCRC. CCRC means it's a continuing care retirement community. And we had 3 levels of care there. We had the independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing. And at Channing House, or I guess it also applies in other CCRCs, the residents, all residents that are admitted to the retirement community would have to go through the independent living first. So that's the criteria in Channing House. In order to be admitted, you need to be, let's see, you have to be 65, but not older than 80, I believe. And you still have to have, you have to still be independent, moving around and cognitively intact. So basically, it's for people who are still who want to go to a facility and and live in a community. So most of the people that we had, they sell their homes and then admit to a facility like Channing House. So at Channing House, the since they come in as independent living residents, they stay there, and then when their healthcare status change, then they move to our assisted living or skilled nursing. So that's and I believe that's true in all the CCRCs, except that sometimes the other CCRCs admit residents directly to their skilled nursing or to the assisted living. At Channing House, we did not do that. All the residents that go to assisted living and skilled nursing would be coming from the independent living. So when I was there was a discussion about creating a special care unit for the residents with dementia. And we talk about this, my medical director and my activity director and I, we discussed whether there should be an integrated unit or a separate unit. And in my opinion, because of the way Channing House was organized, where we did not admit anybody from the outside to go to assisted living or skilled nursing, I felt that, and even my medical director felt that it's better to integrate the residents with dementia with the other residents in our assisted living. And our rationale was that most of the residents that are there, they know each other. They become like a family. They know each other, so that when they move to the assisted living, even in the assisted living, they already know each other because they knew them from when they were in the independent living. So there was the relationship that occurred among the residents. I think is powerful, even though some residents may be confused. The residents who do not have dementia, who are with them, would be understanding because they become, it's almost like they become a family. So that's one research study that I think would be helpful, is to determine whether the quality of life of the residents with dementia is better when they're integrated with the residents in the assisted living or when they are separated. I left before we were able to do the project. So one other thing is that the other potential research that I have thought about was to determine and I think Micah already mentioned this, to determine the predisposing factors such as maybe DNA, educational background, lifestyle, living environment among people over 65 with dementia. Now, why is it important that the people who are over 65, like myself, should be in a study? And I, if we really think about it, if we, the older folks like me, would be in a study, and they will, there will be some, obviously there'll be questions asked and determine, what our lifestyle was, educational background, living environment, and hopefully the DNA. If all these factors are included in the research, then you can compare that with those who have dementia. See, if we have that kind of result now, or maybe like 2 years from now, think about how powerful that result would be for those people, our children, at least my children, like those who are in their 40s, 30s, 40s, to know this kind of study result. Because if we found out that our group, my generation, I guess, have some kind of lifestyle that had predisposed, us to developing dementia, then the people, our children or grandchildren will learn from that, and hopefully they can change. If they're doing the same thing like we're doing now, they can still change so that they will not have the problems that we have. So to me, that is the most important thing. And I'm not only talking about dementia, I'm also talking about other diseases like cancer, the heart disease, diabetes, all those. So we have the group we have the group to do this study. I mean, the population. So this directory is so important. As far as I'm concerned, it's very important. And we can tap on this, on the people, we'll do research on them that would benefit the younger generation. So that's my, I guess that's my bias about the research and about this directory. And I think that's all that I can say. Thank you.
Aloha guys, I'm Deslynn Jaquias. I'm on the island of Kauai. It's one of the oldest Hawaiian islands. I'm actually mixed. I'm Filipino, Hawaiian, Spanish, Chinese, and so I fall into both categories. In the islands, a lot of our families, so my grandparents, this is my grandpa Sancho, and this is my grandma Mercy. Both sets of their parents immigrated to Hawaii from the Philippines. And on my dad's side, my grandpa immigrated from the Philippines, and my grandmother's parents are from Hawaii and then also from the Philippines. And so here it's normalized for us that as we age, that the children take care of the grandparents. And so we have a lot of homes that is like multi-generational. And so my son was fortunate to live in a home where it was the great grandparents, the grandparents, myself, and then him. So for my grandparents, they were independent living on their own. And my grandfather used to drive. And so one day he got lost. He went to go do an errand and then he didn't know where he was. And so because of the decline, he was having dementia. And for his safety, we had to take them out of the independent living situation, and they had to move in with us. And what I noticed was it was so difficult for him to transition because he loved his independence. He liked to go to the beach, and they used to go to the beach, pick cans, and just have the ability to go to and from, because it's so much safer living here in the islands. As he progressed, it was really frustrating for him because he couldn't do what he wanted to do. He loved my grandmother. He did everything for her, but he was starting to decline in his memory. There was one instance when he locked himself in the bathroom and he couldn't get out. And so we were scared for him because, so we had to like literally remove the doorknob. And then we had to change the locks and put a key on the outside. And the reason why I share this is my grandfather and my grandmother, they had 7 kids, and I'm one of 24 grandchildren, and my son is one of like 46. And so we're a really big family. When they've always been like responsible and taking care of us, because in Hawaii, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the term ohana. Well, ohana means family, and so they taught us to make sure you make every effort to be together. But as they got older, for my grandfather, he's older than my grandmother, he wasn't able to cook, and we go camping, we camp every summer. He wasn't able to cook. He wasn't able to help set up the tents the way he wanted to and whatnot. And then, so he passed away in 2012. He had 13, he had cancer on top of the fact that he had dementia. And then, so my grandmother became a widow. And so he died at 82, grandmother became a widow. I feel like, because I used to work with elderly in long-term care, I could see a decline in her because, she doesn't have my grandfather. And so when she was, I believe, 79, 78, I was telling my mother, I said, I think you should go to the adult care center. And she was adamant, like, no, I don't want to go and whatnot. And I convinced her to just go and try it out. And the reason why I share this is, living at home, being by yourself, not socializing with people can just add to the fact if you're having a decline, in your mental capacity, your physical capacity and whatnot. When she started going there, she still is having a decline, but the socialization, learning how to cook, playing bingo, exercising, uh, she went on adventures with her friends. What she would do, so my grandmother, when she turned 80, she was like, I'm the youngest 80-year-old. And then when she turned 81, I'm the youngest 80. Like, she just felt so youthful because the people that she was with at the daycare were actually older than her. They're like in their 90s and some of them 100, and they were still able to communicate and verbalize and assimilate. It was so encouraging for her. It's like she had a new life all over again. One of the things that I noticed that helped her is her memory, because I think she had better memory than me. She would write down when people would come in. There's I'd say about 80 people. My grandmother would write down attendance. So when people would walk through that door, my grandmother would write down everyone who walked through that door. She knew everyone. But towards the end, her health declined. She had diabetes, she had high blood pressure, and it was just really hard. But what I wanted to share is the reason why I decided to register is I'm fortunate that they were able to live to their 82, and that my mother, she was already on the verge of retiring, but I really had to assist in helping my mom, because what happened was in the midst of helping her mom, because my grandmother forgets to take her medication, and then you gotta clean, and then even if she's going to the daycare, she has to ride a bus. Like initially, I would be taking her, but her body, because of the diabetes and the water retention, we weren't able to always transport, and so she started to get assistance on the bus to go there. What happened was my mother started to have care as a caregiver. It affected her physical well-being, you know, because between cooking, cleaning, and this is her third parent, her stepmom, and then her dad, and that were in hospice care in this house. It just took a toll on her, and I had to really step up and to help her. For some reason, in the islands, there's like this guilt that if I put my parent or my grandparent in an assisted living situation, a long-term care, that we're bad, you know. And so I was talking to Araceli, and I said, you know, I don't know why we feel that way, you know, but my grandmother was so stubborn. Unfortunately, she got injured, and we were going to put her in the long-term care. She got injured, and then she ended up going declining, and she passed away by the end of that week. We kind of like chuckling about it, because like my grandmother didn't want to go. I go, but it's unfortunate she got injured and she never went. The day she she got like the day, I think right before she was gonna pass or something, they called to say, oh, she's able to go in. I was like, well, she can't go in already because she's already, you know, like declined. And so I just wanted to tell you guys that I'm in Hawaii, and I wanted to learn about this, because if there's a way to prevent, because I'm 46, I'm gonna be 50 pretty soon. If there's a way to prevent getting Alzheimer's and dementia, I want to know for myself and the future generations, and intervention, because if there's a way to slow it down, I think that's amazing. And also for treatment, because if there's a will, there's a way. And I think if we can encourage our family and our friends to participate in research, and just answering questions, the simple questions that you think is like minuscule, it's important. I think that it's worth it. And so I'm grateful to be a part of what you guys are doing out here in the Hawaiian Islands. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Jessica De Leon. My family is also from the Philippines, from Pangasinan and Malabon. I was raised here in the Bay Area in San Jose. I usually have two hats. So I see patients in clinic, but then I also spend some time working in dementia research. So if it's okay with you, I'll also tell you a little bit about my perspective as a neurologist, why I think it's important for our AAPI community to participate and then also be represented in the types of research that's going on. And for this, I'll focus on how it's hard to even just diagnose dementia sometimes, particularly because of how rich, how diverse our language and our cultural experiences are. So normally if somebody comes to clinic and they say that they're having some kind of memory problem, there's a few things that we like to do to try to figure out why. There's a lot to even just talk about, about whether people from the AAPI community even feel comfortable, right, going to a memory clinic in the first place. Maybe because a lot of times we think, it's part of just getting older. We don't like for people to, outside of the family, to sometimes even know, right, that we're having some kind of memory difficulty. So there's a bit of shyness, a bit of, I guess, embarrassment even about the symptoms. But if someone does come to the clinic, we might do some things like some blood tests, do some brain imaging to look for types of volume loss in the brain. So in the bottom picture, you can see that the one on the left has a very full looking brain that's taking up most of the space in the skull. But then if someone is starting to have memory problems or Alzheimer's, we can see that that brain kind of shrinks a little bit. It's smaller in the volume. The other thing we try to do is we do these pen and paper tests. So for example, asking someone to draw a clock and then put the hands at a certain time, and those types of tests can help us diagnose. But the problem is that with those pen and paper tests, they're mostly made for English speakers, right? And for people who grew up in the US. So you can see how sometimes that can be a bit of a problem. So in Tagalog, for example, there's no word for beaver. Right, so if you see this, one of my patients called it a daga, so it's like a rat, but is that close enough? I don't know. And so I just show this to illustrate, if someone comes in and we're trying to diagnose them, but they speak another language, or maybe they just don't speak English as strongly, it's not as comfortable for them, and they get this question wrong. Right? Is it because they actually have dementia, or is it just that they don't really know the word in their own language? So we need some better tests, ones that are more culturally appropriate and that are really made with the vocabulary and the structure for these different languages. And then the other example I had, sometimes we ask people, okay, name it as quickly as possible. So here, this is someone who speaks English and Spanish, and they have 2 words for the word apple. And so if you're bilingual, you're speaking more than one language, it takes you a little bit longer to get that word right because you have a lot of languages in your head. But if you try to score them on the test, they don't take that into account. And so it might look like they have a lower score. Right? But then once again, is it because someone has dementia, or is it that they speak more than one language and we're not taking that into account when we're trying to diagnose? So next, I'll just show you a couple of slides of the type of research that we're doing in our group. As I mentioned before, people who are bilingual or speak other languages might score lower on the language tests. But sometimes we also give people what are called these frontal tasks or frontal executive tasks, and they actually score better. And it's probably because being bilingual is a form of exercise of the brain. And then when we look at their scans, they actually have more brain volume in that yellow area there. So there's an area that seems to actually be bigger sometimes in bilingual speakers. So there's a lot that we have to learn still about how the brain changes when we have these different types of language experiences, but we can't really do that, right, unless we're doing research with people who are bilingual or who speak different languages. And then the last example I'll give, this is a slide that shows how people who speak different languages can actually have different symptoms of dementia. So we have English speakers in orange and then Italian speakers in blue. And these people have a kind of dementia that's a bit more rare. We call it NFV-PPA for short because the real name is non-fluent variant primary progressive aphasia, which is too long to say. So it's different from Alzheimer's, and this is a kind that affects language. And so we did the study, we saw that these 2 groups had different symptoms, even though they had the same disease. So the English speakers have more difficulty with pronouncing words, while the Italian speakers have more trouble with the grammar and with syllables because it's a complicated grammar. And it's probably, this difference is a reflection of the features of the two languages. But they still have the same kind of brain volume loss if you look at their brains, as shown on the right. So we don't really know sometimes what language symptoms in dementia look like in other languages because we don't really study them as much, right? And so we can't really study them though unless we really start trying to diversify the people that we see in our research. So even just thinking about my own family, right? If they were to come in, they were to have this diagnosis, I'm not sure we could make the diagnosis if because many of them speak Tagalog stronger than they do English, and I don't know, what their symptoms are going to look like. So I think I'm just hoping to show and just to add to to echo that I think it's helpful to have participation and our representation from our community because just showing you from my lens as a neurologist, I think that participation can be really valuable in improving dementia diagnosis and care for our community and then also our own family members. We need to do a better job with diagnosis and we don't have the right tests and the right tools to do that right now. And then as we've already touched on with Araceli and Deslynn, just how important we need to learn more about caregiving, right? Caregiving support, what our needs are. And so I hope that, coming together in research participation is a way to learn from each other, take better care of each other, and then also for future generations to learn for them. So that's all I had. So thank you for listening and spending your morning with us.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. So we're going to continue about talking about the care registry. So again, the purpose of the care registry is to create a large registry of AAPI adults who could be contacted about potential research studies to participate in. These health topics can vary and be as diverse as topics about ADRD, aging, caregiving related research, and other health topics across the lifespan for AAPI. So we want to create this research registry to, again, increase representation and create an outlet for AAPI voices to be heard. So you can enroll for the care registry by visiting our website, careregistry.ucsf.edu. As soon as you go onto our website, you will be able to access our online survey. You can find the online survey here at Enroll in Care. So this survey will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and there'll be questions about your social demographic background, general health questions, and caregiving questions if that is applicable to you. And as a token of our appreciation, you will have an option upon completion of the survey to receive a $10 gift card. And so in order to participate, you first need to be eligible for care. So to be eligible for the care registry, you must self-identify as Asian, Asian American, and/or Pacific Islander. You must also be 18 years or older, have the ability to speak in either of the languages of English, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Vietnamese, or Samoan, or also be able to read in English, Simplified Chinese, Traditional Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, or Samoan. We're also currently working to add Hindi translations, but in the future, we always look towards creating more translations available for the care registry. And finally, you must have an interest in participating in potential research. So again, some of the questions that may arise are questions about current health conditions you may have, such as neurological disease and related symptoms of dementia, or symptoms of heart disease, cancer, mood-related issues. It could also ask questions about current health behaviors you may have, such as smoking, physical activity, diet, and questions about social demographic background and caregiving experiences, if that is applicable to you. So I'm really excited to announce to all of you that the Care Registry is open for all of you, and that and I encourage you all to enroll into the Care Registry and to share the Care Registry with your communities, your families, and your professional networks. And I'd like to emphasize that when you register within the Care Research Registry, that you are not obligated to participate in anything unless you want to. So it is completely up to you if you do want to participate. No one will force you or anything. It's completely up to you. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today. And again, if you would like to enroll into the Care Registry, please visit our website at careregistry.ucsf.edu. And if you have any questions or concerns that you would like to reach out about, please reach out to us through our phone or email address at careaapi@gmail.com. Or if you would like information of our principal investigator, Dr. Vanderpark, her information is also here at van.park@ucsf.edu. So next we will continue with our Q&A portion, and then we will conclude with our raffle.